Okay, read the exhibit you brought to us. Anything else you want us to look at?
Oh yeah, actually we've done quite a bit of work in preparation. First of all, I furnished that to you as quick as I could, Kayla, and it was a hand grenade toss on the numbers. What we've developed is much more accurate because I had some time to look up levies and do the arithmetic going back all the way to 2009 actually.
And we'll be able to discuss that depending on what we do and how far and if we go back.
Well,
So
that's fine.
There's certain laws that govern and control what we do.
Are you the guy in the basement?
Yeah, we gotta get our emergency manager new clock. It's 4 minutes slow.
Do those laws, I don't want to get into that now, actually. But
Well, that's kind of what.
I think there should be, if there's not, a difference between whether the laws bind you to do the wrong thing, or you have the option. I was told that you guys have a certain amount of latitude.
A certain amount, but not latitude to not bind ourselves to the laws that exist. That's kind of getting outside that latitude. There, you know, I think it's an unjust law.
I think in this instance, the way things worked out, that's our perspective. I'm sure you guys have probably got a slightly different angle on it.
I don't know yet.
So let me plow into what I got,
Okay.
and we'll see how this goes. First, thanks for meeting with us. We are here really to discuss 3 issues. 2 of them go back a long way, and one of them is much more recent. Before I go a lot further, I want to get this on the table. My wife and I have never been to a meeting like this. We've never needed to go to a meeting like this. We pay our fair share. We've always paid our fair share. And the way we've been assessed, by and large, has been very, very fair. Okay, so we've never really gone to this length to express distaste with how we've been treated from a tax standpoint. But these 3 issues, there's no doubt in our minds, and I hope in yours, that have caused us to carry an undue tax burden, an unfair tax burden. And this unfair burden is due to what I'm going to term mistakes. I'm sure that some of us have a different perspective on that, and poor communication. So again, we have spent a substantial amount of money, more than our peer group, more than the rest, creating this unfair burden. And I'm going to ask you guys to perhaps think outside the box a little bit on this before we adjourn today. Okay?
What's your profession? Are you an attorney?
He's got to the holiday and last night.
No, I am not an attorney. I'm a retired general manager, general business manager.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Sound like you're making an opening argument.
I am not an attorney, and I ain't gonna hold it against you
30+
that you
years
accuse me of being one.
So I question you of being one.
No, the closest I get to that is my nephew who's in law school right now. So, issue number 1, square footage. Our house was completed in 2009 in Swan Valley. It's a nice home. Not nearly as nice as most of them out there, but it's certainly a nice place. The assessor, whoever that was, came out before the home was completed, and evidently before we even had walls up. I don't know. But they included in my barn, unbeknownst to me, there was really no way that I knew that we knew to verify this one way or the next. But they included roughly 850 square feet in 2nd floor storage space in my barn as living space. There's no septic, there's no heat, there's nothing. It's a box, a storage room. Going back to 2009, we have paid a substantial amount of money guys would like to see what we got here. Sorry, head fake there. Thank you. So this spreadsheet is pretty self-explanatory. The years are on the left. The assessment value according to Bonneville County for that year. Separated the land out from the improvements. The lot taxes are shown there, the assessed value of the improvements. Nothing there for 2022 because we don't have a levy yet. The assessed value of the improvements less 17.8%, which is the percentage of space that my taxes were overstated by. So
On the detached.
850
Or the whole house?
The whole house.
Okay.
800, so it's 17
That's
point,
gonna be relevant here.
okay, it's 17.8% more than I should have paid. So the assessed value was reduced to 650, on the first line, 650. And the rest is just the arithmetic. The levy was pulled directly from the county treasurer's website, I think. Yeah, treasury. And corrected tax on improvements is what I should have been charged. The rest is arithmetic. Over the course of time, going back to 2009, we have been overcharged by $9,266.
Okay, let's deal with these issues as we go because they're separate and different.
Agreed.
So on this particular issue, when they do an assessment, they show the improvements. But for example, a detached barn will be assessed at a lesser amount than the rest of the house. So I think what we'd have to focus on first is the amount of the detached barn.
No, that's not accurate based on what I have here attached. So we've got the before and after cards that came out of the county's files. We had no idea these even existed. And I've got some suggestions on how these should be used moving forward to provide data to your taxpayers so that they understand what in God's name they're getting charged for. Because right now, a bill comes. What are you?
Well, tell us the different tax codes, or I mean, the different assessments you use for detached versus the
So I think
regular home.
the main
they
question on
come
this
out
one
on
is
here.
there is a second story to the garage. We did have it picked up as living quality finish. The reason for that, at the time, the appraiser that went out and measured the home, I have, sorry, I don't have copies for everybody, but if you flip through, basically, if you look at the back, I've included the original sketch that she went out and sketched, and she just documented that it was an estimate. So my assumption, I don't know for sure, is that when she measured it, she wasn't able to get into the garage or the detached garage to verify the finish upstairs. And at that point, she made the decision to pick up this finished area. It's been picked up as finished living space since its construction. There's been letters that have been sent to try to verify that information. It's similar to like when we'll pick up a home, it's been an estimated value. So when we haven't verified if basements are finished, or in this instance, the living space above, or the space above the garage was living area, it was picked up as finished. It's been picked up as finished since that point.
Okay, so what's the difference in the value you would put on finished versus unfinished? Because there is a value to the storage. The increased value is if it's finished.
I think the point is that we were being charged as if that were full-on living space.
And you would have been charged as if it were storage space, so there's a value in between those.
I understand what you're saying. Okay, fair enough.
I honestly don't know what that exact amount would have been, especially over the course of the last 20 years or 13 years, I guess, since the time of its construction. I would assume around $100 a square foot right now in today's market. So if it was 800 square feet, $80,000.
$8,000 in value.
In value.
And what did you?
But at that, again, that's at today's market, and that's.
So you said 100 per square foot, and what would the value be of a finished livable space?
About $80,000 would be my
I
guess.
said
at
$100
$100
square foot with
finished.
value
Unfinished, yeah, I don't know, I mean,
What would be the value of the
of an
storage?
unfinished,
Storage now, unfinished.
Unfinished storage.
should be able
That's what we're
to,
looking at, is the difference between the two.
I can't tell you, it would be possible to see what that cost of that current, because Toni was able to reappraise it, the appraiser was able to reappraise it and pick it up as unfinished loft essentially. So we could determine what that value would be, and whatever it is currently. Currently, that garage is carrying, all we really need to know is what that loft value is adding. Does that make sense?
So I could do it as living space.
So look at the value, remove the loft. Now, we know what the building space is, so if you just remove the value of the loft, let's see what the value is compared to. Does that make sense?
Dustin, forgive me, you said the value of finished living space is $100 a square foot?
So,
No, I'd love to, show me where I can buy that.
Well,
not on a, not on-
that's what you're assessed at. You said they've been very fair, and usually the assessments are less than the market value. And that's what the rest of that.
By what
House a
fraction?
year back.
Because that's about a third.
Yeah, I know that's what you're being assessed and taxed on for the rest of the value of the house, so you've got to compare apples to apples. You can't
I
say,
believe I've done that.
well, it's difficult to say, where can you buy $100 square foot, but what's the value of the rest of your house compared to that?
It's what I was charged for. And what I was charged for was the equivalent of, let's call it 300, which is at the low end. A $300 per square foot house is what I paid for.
Is that what the value on this house is?
$3
$300
a square
per square foot?
That's the build value today. If I
No.
wanted to build a house
Right,
today,
but we're
that's,
talking, you don't wanna pay taxes on that.
no, certainly I don't.
Okay, so we're trying, we're looking at
Because if you-
the assessed value of the house, or
If you're
the
arguing the
appraised,
assessed
the
value
house
should be
appraisal,
300
which
on that,
you
that
really
makes the
don't
argument the
wanna.
assessed value should be $300 a square foot
I
on
see
the rest
what,
of
I
your
see
house.
what you're doing. All right, fine.
Okay. We're just trying to find equity in either method, and the method that they use for mass appraisal is more in the taxpayer's favor, because they base it on actual sales. And, you know, when you go to build now,
We'll talk about that on bucket number 3 that I've got. for you. So,
so, well, while we're waiting for that, this one's a little more clear cut on the homeowners exemption program.
I agree.
So go ahead and
Well,
explain that.
when we built the home, we were full-time Utah residents. We used the home part-time as a vacation home and spent every minute there that we possibly could. As such, the homeowners exemption program was never even presented to us. We've never seen anything on it, nothing at all. Until 3.5 weeks ago, I guess, which is when, after the letter from Toni came asking for an appointment, we started turning some rocks over. We discovered the square footage discrepancy. And we also discovered this HOE program that reduced, we became full-time residents in 2013, first of the year. And we've lost, overpaid by $800. And it's just, actually not 800 because the levy or the exemption actually moved. But the second piece of this Excel spreadsheet right here, this one, details out by year, again excluding 22, because we don't have a levy yet. But the arithmetic is simple. It's the levy times the HOE total exemption, and the resulting overpayment is shown on the right, so it's $6,335 that we've overpaid going back to 2013, the day that we became residents.
This bucket is where the law is fairly clear. And the only way you can get homeowners exemption is if you make an application. If you haven't made an application, you know, we can't go around and tell everybody they're supposed to. The title company your own knowledge, you know, you said when you dug into it this year, but the law, what did you?
We did send the letter when it was originally completed. That's
Oh, really?
that first page, that first attached page. And then aside from that, it is listed on every single assessment notice, indicates that there has been less 0 exemption. So it showed the exemption and showed that there has been no exemption.
And it being completely in the dark about anything called an HOE program at all, how would a person know what that means? How would I know
The letter-
as a Utah resident
The letter
that
that's
moved
sent,
here, that means that I can reduce the assessed value of my home by X amount of dollars if I became part of it, if I enrolled in this program. By the way, the day we figured out that this program even existed, we completed an application, and that application is pending right now.
But I think the issue is the burden is upon the homeowner to all that, as long as they.
How on earth would I? Somebody has to answer
Every
that.
person in Idaho knows. or
This
that
was
lives in
notice
Idaho.
given in 2009.
This, you guys, I think you know so enough now, if I would have received this, I'd have been all over it.
Were you
This
on
is
the
what I
news?
got,
so the
this is what
challenge,
I
I
got.
think, with this, this is the actual letter that we had scanned in that was sent in 2009. It probably didn't qualify, well, I know it wouldn't have qualified that first year. Utah does have a similar program where it's a homeowner's exemption, essentially where they're exempting a piece of the value if it's your primary residence. I don't know if they require, I don't know the full requirements, I'm not sure if they require each person to apply for it unless they're receiving an exemption in another state. But it is a homeowner exemption policy. I don't know what their assessment notices look like, but we do send this letter. At the time this letter was sent, you probably would not have qualified because it was not your primary residence.
Right.
Well, there's two issues. That's the issue of residency, and the other one is we never, and you and I went round and round on the phone on this, we never got that. That was never received.
I did not, in
Is
fact, the
your
only thing
mailing
I got,
address
'cause I think
1388 Magic Wand, Draper, Utah?
that's the right address.
That's
But I can
okay.
tell you that after, when I was talking to Toni, she said every 5 years, those letters that we receive go out. This is all I received in 2017. I did not receive
That's the
anything
one
like
and
we
only.
got in August. I have the whole, everything every year.
And that's your tax bill.
Right, but we didn't receive
There's no,
anything that says, hey, we have an estimate, we want to come out and look at the property. We didn't get that.
So unfortunately, so going into that a little bit, so this is a copy of the letter that was sent. This is, in addition to that, along with kind of the other portion of the packet, well, I don't have the actual copy of the letter that were sent. This kind of shows our file structure and it's kind of an automated system that every year, every home that we've been in, and it's not an estimated value, they'll get a survey that is essentially, rather than having us during that 5-year cycle for us to come out and walk through your house each time, obviously people don't love us walking through their home. So if we've been in it within the last 10 or 15 years, we send a survey out. For those homes that we've never been in, it's an estimated value. We send out a letter specifically saying, hey, we're going through the area, we've never been in your home, we'd love an opportunity to come through and schedule an appointment to come through and verify your information. While I don't have actual copies of those letters, I do have these files that have been created is clear back to 2017 that show that in this instance in 2017, the address that it was sent to was P.O. Box 45 in Swan Valley, regarding the site address at 229 Eagle Tree, and then again for 2023, it was sent to 229 Eagle Tree.
Yeah,
So
and that's when
in
it was
2017, it would have gone to the address, like I said, this is the exact address it would have gone to, Mark, at P.O. Box 45, Swan Valley, Idaho 83449, for the site address that. So I don't have the actual letter. I mean, it shows that this file was created in September of 2017. It would have been the same in 2012 when the letter was sent. This is just kind of the automated system that has occurred. So I understand that you're saying you didn't receive the letter.
no, we didn't receive, I'm not saying it, we didn't receive the letter. You guys, we're here today as a result of one of these letters finally breaking through and getting in our hands. Does it follow logically that we would have been here long ago if we would have had some inkling that there's $1,000 on the table every year for us? Does that follow logically? So the fact that there's some arbitrary law that forces you, is that what you're saying, forces you?
Number one, it's not an arbitrary law, it's a law.
What you see depends on where you're sitting.
Yeah, and we see is I mean, we're obligated to uphold the laws of the state of Idaho as they are on whether we agree or disagree. Some of them we disagree with, but we have to enforce. Homeowners exemption and deadline is one of those.
Could I ask a couple of questions? Sure. How long did you own your home in Utah?
17 years.
Do you still own it?
No, we sold it in 2013.
When
And
you
moved
sold
here.
it, did you notify Utah that you no longer?
Yes.
No, that you no longer are qualified for the homeowner's exemption,
Yes,
which is required by Utah's law.
as part of the closing
So
documents.
the concept of the homeowner's exemption then shouldn't be completely alien because you can't have one in two states.
I think it's handled
Yeah, we
differently
did
in
not-
I'm sure
in the
it's
state of
handled
Utah than
differently
it
in
is.
Jefferson County than it is in Bonneville.
Well, it
And
wasn't called
forgive the
that.
comment,
It's-
it's much more cloak and dagger here
Yeah,
than it is in Utah.
and that wasn't actually called out. It was, as far as I can remember, when we closed on the house. I don't remember them saying it's a primary house, you're gonna get this. I would have been like, cha-ching. So I don't know if it was
Well,
wrapped up in the.
when you built the house, you wouldn't have qualified. So they
Right, but I'm
wouldn't-
saying at
Correct.
closing.
They
Wouldn't
wouldn't
have
have
seen it.
brought
But
it
at
up.
closing,
And I can see where there's some changes that could be made that would, instead of saying no exemptions listed, if the tax notice actually said homeowner's exemption, no.
exactly,
No.
and that's
But
the thing at
That's,
the end.
And
that's
even-
moving forward.
And even a,
Exactly.
even
But
a
that's
step
the-
beyond
None of
that
us
would be
were-
to say, you left money on the table here, Chuck,
Right.
right? That may cut cross grain to
Well,
what your
no,
guys' job is here, but
it doesn't, because honestly, if you look at all the counties on this side of the state, and I can't talk about Utah because I've never owned land in Utah. Most of my family does. I'm up here. But with regards to property taxes and Idaho and eastern Idaho and southeastern Idaho, Bonneville County is the least expensive place tax-wise to live
well, I
compared
have
to
done,
Bingham, Bannock, Jefferson, and Madison.
I have done more than my part on making that not true.
And that is extremely unfortunate, and well, I have had numerous discussions with our state policemen that I really think their speed limit on Highway 26 is arbitrary.
I'd agree with you.
Because the general speed of traffic is 72 miles an hour,
72.
not 70, not 65.
Right.
And that's an arbitrary number. And when he decides to pull somebody over at 68 and the other 9, 10 cars go by at 72, that seems to be an arbitrary enforcement. But I also recognize that there is only one of him patrolling that, and he goes from stop to stop to stop. And it's still the state law, and he's still enforcing it, whether I like the ticket or not. And unfortunately, it would really tick me off if I had been overpaid, been overtaxed on property, okay?
Yeah.
It would. The side that I came to really quickly when I moved into this seat, and I'm the one you didn't talk to because
She did her job.
while the other one, she was listening while the other secretary is explaining to me, and she says, no, I'll call him back and I'll explain to him that you can't talk to him, because, anyway, so I think they do a great job. But that's all of those taxes which are collected, and when you look at your tax notice, there's the school district and the college and the, I don't think there's library district up there, is there?
Yes, there is.
Okay, library district and dump and transport fee, and all of those fees for all of the agencies except the Bonneville County portion are dispersed as soon as the taxes are collected. So even though you paid a higher tax than maybe your next door neighbor did, the school district claimed that portion of your tax because that's what the law said they could have. That's what their budget said was their portion. So the school district got that money for each year that was paid out. And each year, the library district got theirs, and the cemetery district, and the fire district. So all that money was paid out each year. And that's why there's an important deadline that says, you notice something, you have to come by the deadline, because then that money is dispersed, and there's no way for us to go back to the school district and say, sorry, you gotta give us back $4,000.
So let me see if I
Fire
understand.
district,
Let me see
Okay.
if I understand. Because you took my money, too much of it, and that money has been spent.
well, if we're gonna get into
And-
definitions, I'd say you gave us the money
and-
because you wrote the check.
No, you
We
took
didn't
it.
come,
You took it. I don't know too many taxpayers that do this voluntarily. But you took it, you spent it, it's gone now, and because that happened before the 72-mile-an-hour arbitrary date, I'm out of luck. Too bad, should have read the fine print, should have been conscious of this issue before you were conscious of this issue. I got a pretty good understanding of it, I think, don't I?
Well, let me add another understanding to that. We didn't take it, we collected it for the others by statute, which we're obligated to do. They put certain deadlines in there so that we can't go back after, because they have to set their budgets, and there is no way to recollect it. Anyway,
As I read
Yeah.
the description of this process, your charge is, as I understand it, to ensure that taxes are done fairly. Was this fair? Are these two issues that are laid out in black and
We're
white?
talking homeowners exemption. My definition of fair was, did you mean the statute, or was it because?
The result is,
Because you were, well, the result was largely because you didn't understand it, and you have that, if you call the IRS and don't understand a law and don't make the payment, you're still obligated.
so then the answer to my question that I just posed to this gentleman is, yeah, you're out of luck. You guys are
Well,
perfectly comfortable with us.
That's my opinion on this one. This one, we've got some more looking to do, but unfortunately, when the title company, there's a mailing
Right.
law in Idaho that shows that these, the obligation is once we drop it in the mailbox, it's been mailed.
Right.
Because we had no way of going back and verifying whether it was delivered.
So even if I would get this in 2009, this wasn't a current primary residence, which is what this whole thing is telling us. If it's a primary residence,
But
call us.
it's telling you what you need to do to qualify it.
But it's if
You
you're a
need
primary
to-
resident. It doesn't say
I know.
if it ever becomes a
But
primary
it,
resident,
but
call
it
us.
alerts you to the
Yeah,
fact that
qualify,
when you do
must
become a
own
primary
and
resident.
occupy.
And you guys think that's good? Like that's sufficiently good
We don't
communication to
make the
come?
laws of the state.
That's the best
But
we
you
can
do carry out the communication, sir. And do you
Yeah.
feel that the communication in this instance was sufficiently good so that we understood this program?
The requirement by the state is, the letter's not required by the state. The notice that you get each year indicates that. The letter is something that we send as a courtesy, and I understand that that it may not designate because this wasn't your primary residence, and maybe the wording doesn't specify in this instance that it was not your primary residence, but it doesn't.
And if
All right.
they actually,
But if the letter wasn't sent at all,
I think, like I said, if we would have received this letter, I would have saved it. If I would have received the letter that I got August 17th, I would have been all over it. I mean, all over it. And I will just say that when we applied for our septic permit, we had to provide the house plans, and that was in 2008. So that's that department. The planning and zoning, which you have here, was in 2008, which is pretty much the same numbers we have on our plan. So how we ended up on that card that Toni gave us at 4784, I mean, you have this on file. Like, that's the communication we're
What's
talking
the
about.
4784? I lost you.
You wanted
That's the amount of square
It's
footage
on
that
page
we
two.
were
We're
charged.
back to the square
Yep,
footage, so
Yeah,
let's
so-
take care of the homeowners exemption.
It doesn't sound like we're gonna take care of anything.
In my opinion, it doesn't meet the requirements that we can do that, but I've got two other
I don't
opinions.
see how we can either. And to answer your question, is that sufficient noticing? Probably not. I mean, obviously it wasn't in your situation, right? But we are bound to look at the situation of everybody in the state and follow the state statutes. I agree with Commissioner Christensen, and I just don't see how we can do that with you.
I-
You know,
So
I don't know
can
how we
change
could
that.
ever give a specific notice, unless you did a test afterwards, to say, you as an individual taxpayer that got it, do you understand all of the nuances of this?
So that's not what I'm asking for. That's not the point I'm
No.
making, and I think we both know that.
No, you know that, I don't know that.
Well, now you
because-
do.
No, I don't.
What I am asking for
I have,
is,
I have a different knowledge than you do of that, if you're saying I know that. What I know is that you do the best you can, and the obligation is on a taxpayer. I can't give you something specific for every issue and make sure you understand it any different than him, because you've got different backgrounds. There's no way, all you can do is notify you that it's available.
all right, let's move on to 2022.
John, what's your thoughts first?
Well,
On the exemption.
like I said, I way feel for you in a way you probably can't grasp, because we sold our house in Idaho Falls in 2011. And we have the property in Palisades. In our minds, then, that became our sole residence. I didn't shift our homeowners exemption. It had been a long time since I closed on our house. That process, I became aware of that 5-6 years later. That was my mistake. I knew that. So I didn't go through this process. I owned the error. My situation was different. We had a homeowner's exemption on the 2 previous homes, and I knew that existed. It had been dealt with by the title company when we sold and bought, but we had 2 homes. We sold this one, we already owned that one, so it wasn't a title company thing. Title papers, when we bought that, the property at Palisades where we live now, the homeowner's exemption stuff wasn't in it because we had our primary residence here, just like you had your primary residence in Utah. When I sold the house in Idaho Falls, I just didn't even think of that until 5 years later, when we really started focusing on that stuff because we changed some stuff. And
There's one
it's like,
fundamental difference.
oh geez, yeah.
There's one fundamental difference. You knew about the program. You were
Well,
educated
I
about
guess
the program.
what I'm
You knew of
trying to
it,
get
its
to is that in
existence.
Utah, you knew the existence of the program.
It's handled
It was
completely
in the
different, and I
title
don't
sign.
think we should compare.
Well,
What
I'm
did you
just,
say, apples and
it's
oranges?
the
I think,
idea
yeah?
that there was a homeowner's exemption on your home, and now this is your home.
We-
And that's as remote as the idea was in my mind on our 2 homes.
How would we know there was any such thing? That's my question.
Your title company would have explained it to you.
It wasn't
I
a
don't know what
primary
your tax
residence.
notice in Utah says.
I know that,
It
but
wasn't
we
a
can't,
primary
we can't
And-
cover for all the time.
And I would agree that,
Let's wrap this one up, because I,
Roger, can I finish?
yeah, hurry. We're not making
Okay.
any headway on this argument.
There are always improvements in communications, always things we can do to improve that. And he's already doing that. He's done that since he took over the office 4 or 5 months ago, 4 months ago. And I expect to see a great number of changes occur. But I can't go back and condemn the person who was doing it when these programs were put in place, when we're doing everything in our power to try and improve things. And so I've done very little on property tax except talk about the importance of homeowners exemption and try and get that boosted. And I don't know what more we can do than advertise in every way that we can and get the assessor's office to maybe change some terminology and some letters so that it's more obvious. But those are discussions that his office has to have because
I would,
we don't control the assessor's office.
I would make a recommendation, and to Toni's credit, she spent a lot of time explaining all this to me because I had no
They're
idea
very
what was
patient. They
going
were
on.
with me.
She's awesome. On the initial assessment, June 1st every year, she looked up, she said, oh, you guys aren't in the HOE. Put a box, yes or no.
Yeah, like I said,
And
that
if
would
it's-
be,
if
that would
it's
be an
no,
obvious
then-
change going forward.
Put the application in with the assessment. That's the first thing. Second thing is this awesome card that you can validate that your actual square footage is right. Stick that with it in June. Gives them enough time to look at it and file an appeal. You know, there is ways to help all of us.
Actually, you can pull that up online now.
I know, but it's not,
I
when you
mean,
get
just
this,
now.
I get,
just-
well, but if,
So we're trying to make it really visible, so you don't have to wait till June.
or just put
You
improvement
can-
square footage.
You can go check your
And
properties.
we'll know if it's
So-
right
Great
or wrong.
idea.
So,
It is.
so, the fact that, the public health department knew it, the guy that came out and looked at our house in 13, there's just, seems like there's departmental opportunities. If the RPG number comes up, then you can say, here's the actual square footage, match it, if it's HOE or not, HOE or not. I mean, I just can't even imagine, and I pray to God there's not a lot of us in this space, because if we are, our market values are being compared to people don't even know if it's right either, right? So that's what I would say moving forward, is that particular HOE topic, it could be very easily fixed. Because you only have 30 days, which is a whole nother topic. Those of us that didn't live here full time.
Why you view your stuff online to so you can verify.
None of that applies to.
No, because it was in
to
the
our
past.
situation.
And we're bound by the statute in the
But there's
past.
gonna be a different situation for everybody
So
moving
net-
from
net-
different states, so,
So
You know.
net, sir,
yeah.
there are over $15,000 of overcharges here.
Okay, and that's what we're there may be, because you did not get the application, but statutorily, you have to make an application to qualify for the homeowner's exemption.
Oh,
Outside of that $15,000, that excludes 2022. That's this year. And we know the square footage is wrong. And we know we're gonna get into the HOE program, yet you're still charging me the overage amount in 22. Can we deal with that, please?
And
We should have the exemption this year,
For
right?
2022, yeah, it should be on your desk.
There's been no communication back, surprise,
You
there's been no communication on this.
You should
package.
absolutely get it this year.
Well,
Did you
right.
fill out an application?
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
3 weeks
yes,
ago.
we have it.
The
But-
day we learned of the program, remember when I said that? So,
But it's still
so,
a 21% increase over last year, because of the square footage is in this
Okay.
year.
To focus on 22 first,
That's
because.
We
it.
are.
It is, 858.
Okay,
so we've been hit with a 21% increase in the assessed value of our
but
home.
you're eligible for 2022 because you make the application in 2022.
But sir,
But
that's
it's
outside
still-
of the please stay with me
That's an
here.
and.
Okay,
We, before HOE, before anything, we have received from this man a 21% increase in assessed value, year on year.
based on sales.
Sales of what? Show me the comps.
He can show you those. You missed your deadline to appeal the value last year when your assessment notice came out. If you thought the value was too much, you should have done that.
But
I
every
would-
year, it's been between 2% and 8%. It seems to be relatively okay, and then it jumped to
Do you
21%.
think house prices have gone up more steeply the last year or two? than they have
Absolutely.
every
Do you
other
think
year?
they've gone up 21% in Swan Valley?
In Swan Valley.
actually, I could tell you that most of your neighbors' property values went up between 60 and 70%, not
Sir,
20%.
we sit on the board of our HOA. We know what stuff sells for, how often it sells for, and what the numbers are. I gotta disagree with it. 60% is just a non-starter.
We don't have 10 acres, we have 2.5.
Yeah, we got a
So-
small
I have
one.
one, and mine went up 80%.
Well,
Mine went up
I
last
guess
year,
that's not our point.
60%. So the property values up there that's a whole other issue. Your taxes the property tax increase isn't gonna be relative to the property value increase,
Because the levy will go down.
because the levy's gonna go down.
Go back to the part
Because
that we do
Our
have
budget
some
didn't
latitude.
go up like that.
Some latitude on, and that's if there's an error in the error square footage, and we do have some parameters that we have to live on that, so.
So when we're appraising a home, my understanding, my belief, I believe a letter was sent in an attempt to appraise the home. That is again, and every new construction home in the county for the last 19 years that I've been here and prior, when a home is completed, we make an effort to try to get into the home to appraise it, to verify the finish, to verify the basement finish, the finishes of the quality of the home, the bathroom count, the bedroom count, the fixtures in the kitchens. So when we're not able to, we don't get a response from the homeowner, we do the best we can based on the information that we have and whatever is typical for the area for that type of home. So in this instance, a letter would have been sent. If there was not a response, then the appraiser at that time would have gone by, we would have used the square footage from the building permit. We We don't have an automated system to get the blueprints from planning and zoning to our office. We do have an automated system that gives us the square footage on the building permit. So at that time in 2009, that was the way it was. We would have got the square footage from the building permit, and that if she didn't have an actual sketch that she went out and was able to sketch the home, that's solely what she would have gone on, is purely that building permit square footage. If we do have an opportunity to go measure the home, then we will, obviously, as I spoke to you, if we're having an ability to measure it, we're gonna get more accurate information if we're purely going on that permit, because oftentimes that permit can change. You know,
What would possess this assessor to take the upstairs of a barn
so
as living space?
So my
I'm really
Well-
curious about that, how something like that.
So my
could
assumption is
possibly
that when
happen.
the appraiser was on the property and measuring the home, she measured the home, she measured the garage, and she could see, I haven't been in a home, I'm assuming there are dormers, there's some indication that there is a second floor to the detached garage. My assumption is that she was unable to get into the home, and again, this appraiser is no longer here, but
I don't care
so I
about
can't
that.
ask, but my assumption would be that she, in measuring the home, she could see that there was square footage on a second floor. Her assumption based on the quality of the home itself and maybe whatever's typical for that area, she assumed that there was finish
She was there in
without
December,
getting-
she was there in December.
without getting a response to the letter to appraise.
How could she
Well, I-
gauge quality of home when she was there in December and the home wasn't finished until June 1st?
Well, she would have based the quality of the home when it was completed.
Yeah, so December, this letter,
But she
December,
didn't see
we
it.
were supposed to get it.
Right. And without,
December
so
9th.
again,
It was there.
when we're unable to get into the home, with everything that and all of our appraisers are certified through the state, they go to classes every year too. So she's using every bit of information that she does have available to her to determine a grade and the quality of the home, the finish of the home.
Let me just say this, you gave us this, this is what the permit was when they came out, right? This is correct. This is the correct footage of our house. This is not what is in the card. It was 4,700 square feet.
And that's because the card is showing the finish.
Um,
You should have a copy. The card is showing I think the discrepancy is the square footage over the detached garage, which is at this.
But in the
finished.
card, it's all separate. In the card, it's all separate. It says, it's in here, it's
Broken out.
it's broken out. On the back page of this,
It is
right?
now.
Copies.
It says,
It
it's,
was too.
it's on,
There's now and then.
it's
Right.
before and after.
And this,
So the second to the 9th, before it was corrected.
so the change that has been made by Toni, and this is as soon as we became aware that square footage above the garage wasn't living space, we made the change.
So you know it's wrong.
But,
You know it's an error.
but the permit was
I
right.
mean,
So-
that's a dead indicator that, oops,
Here's the challenge that we have, is when we're unable to get into a home, and we can't verify that a basement is finished, or that the living space
Yeah, but
over,
the plans show.
in general, when we're appraising a home, and we're not able to get into it to verify this information, we do the best we can with the information that we have available. We'll generally do whatever's typical for the area. So again, and this is not the same as this, because you have a basement, but if we're going through neighborhoods, and every 90% of the homes that we've been able to either get a survey response or been able to physically appraise the homes, 90% of these homes have basement finish, and we haven't been able to get into this particular home, and we're placing an estimated value on it. Based on everything that we've seen and what's typical for the area, we will probably pick up basement in that finish because that's what's typical for the area. That may be incorrect. The alternative would be to, because we haven't verified, let's assume it's unfinished, even though most of the other homes are finished. Because we haven't verified that it's finished, we won't call it finished.
Well,
So-
I
But this is
just,
right.
let me, if I may, because we know this is an error. We know that yours isn't unfinished. We know this was an error on the assessor's part. So I think we need to get past that. My personal opinion, we shouldn't put it on if we haven't verified the space. I would rather
Exactly.
err on the side of accuracy than assumptions.
I can understand that, and I think.
And
that
so I agree with you on this. This was an error on the assessor's part.
Okay.
I think is what we need to get to, and I want to wait until our chairman comes back. Restroom probably, but I'm sure, restroom, I'm sure. So anyway, he didn't just walk out of the house. But let's agree that there was a mistake made, in my opinion, by the assessor's office. It was incorrectly assessed, and let's find out what latitude we do
What
have.
that means.
Because
Fine.
we do have some limitations we can do on this as far as going back. Commissioner Walker made a point that is really the reason why we're bound by many of these state statutes, in that we collect the tax and then we distribute it to all the schools and all the agencies to spend it. And so the county citizens can't go back and pick that up.
I understand that, sir. But again, my comment that I opened the meeting with was we are more than willing to pay our fair share. We
It's
always
obvious.
have.
It's obvious.
We always have.
Yeah.
I am not willing to get bent over. And that's what's been happening for 13 years. 13 years and $15,000 worth. We can argue the reasons around the HOA, and perhaps we did have responsibility and culpability for a portion of that. I would submit that your side of the fence did too. But what I am interested in hearing is, what does the upper part of this spreadsheet mean to my wife and I? And what are we gonna do about 2022?
So the question that I've got is, I assume you were sent a notice every year on it, of the square footage, and
No,
It does, the notice doesn't include the square footage. It just includes the
it's
value.
just the
Ding.
value.
And if you,
opportunity.
Yeah.
and if
Or
you,
detached.
and theoretically, regardless of what square footage we have, like, you should be able to look at your value, and if it feels like it's not at market, the value is not market value, then you should appeal it. That's essentially, that's the.
And
the goal.
that's what I said
why
for
we're
the
here.
last, I don't know,
And the
15
moment we
years,
knew
it looked,
that finish wasn't finished, that second floor wasn't finished, we removed it. Had we known in 2009 that it was unfinished, it never would have picked up. If we knew in
it was right.
2013.
This is right, in
Can I-
2008.
Okay, so let's focus, because I heard you say that and I had to slip out. What's the difference between the cost of an unfinished square footage on a deal like this and finished square?
So that loft square footage is currently picking up $43,000, $43,100. So
On
as,
The value.
Is that the new one or the old one?
That's the entire detached garage, not the 800 square feet of upstairs finished or unfinished space.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think when we talked, the difference was about, it was like 800, because the 40 was out of the bonus room above the garage. Because maybe we had two different ones we were looking at. So I think it was around, let me check my notes. There's a lot of scribbling. 816 square feet. That was,
thought it was 848.
well, we had a little bit of the bonus room. They didn't cut the stairs out because there's nothing on each. So it was 816 for just the upper part of the garage. That was counted as living space.
And the difference between storage on that 800 feet and living space on the 800 feet is what we're looking for, because the space existed. It's just that they valued it as living space, not storage space.
Right.
So
How
what's
much
that
would that
difference?
have?
So you're saying if we picked that up as living space now, it's $59,650?
Yeah, and then that was with the 696, so you could divide by 800.
Okay,
and see
so
how much it is.
we did have it at, what was we had it at 816. Essentially, it is currently with unfinished at 3592. Finished, it's 4971 a square foot. So at 696 square feet, that adds about $16,000. At 816, it would be a little more. I don't have a calculator. 816 times the 4972,
So how much per square foot difference is there on finish?
about $14.
$14 more per square foot if it's finished.
And we're talking 800 and
How many square
816.
feet?
816 is what it was.
16 times 14, should be as simple as that, right?
Yeah.
That what I'm hearing?
Yeah, the 696 is $16,550, but at 816, I don't know what that is. 4971.
$14 a square foot.
So
If it's finished.
If
we
it's
can
finished.
figure it, so that it is currently 49.
It's
It's
11,400.
1379 is the difference in square foot. It's 1379 a square foot. not
Okay.
14, but 14 is fine.
1379 times.
13.79 times 816.
Right.
Is $11,252 of additional value,
Valuation. So that's the overage.
right? Yeah, that's
11,
how much
24.
more value we put on their home than we should have.
Yes, if
And at the levy.
this is the finish, this is what it was,
Yeah, this
just the
is
lot.
Yeah, 59.
Is that
Based on
making, is
today's
that making
costs.
sense?
I mean, I don't know what that was last year.
Times 13
for
years,
the last
14
Yeah,
counting
right,
2002,
times those,
or
yeah.
2022, sorry.
So, and then you'd have to figure that on the levy rate of how much they were, how much tax they included.
8.7,
The dollar per square foot's gone up quite a bit in the last few years, though. 2009 wasn't that
Okay,
much.
which gets us, this is an area that we do have discretion on. If you're taxing something that did not exist, you were taxed. And there's, now don't sneer like that, because it's just gonna irritate me.
I don't want to irritate you, so.
No,
Okay.
you don't.
Because an estimated, valuation, when they go and do an estimate, because they haven't been able to get into the house, we don't try to force that. I mean, that's up to you. But when you do an estimate like that without anything else, it can be easily defended in the law, as not an error, because they did an estimate, you didn't appeal it. What we've looked at on things like this, where you can tie it to that, is, we've run this by our legal counsel on 2 or 3 of these, is, we can look at that difference in the error on what it would have been valued per square foot and go back 3 years. Anything beyond that, I can't remember the legal principle they put it on. And that's just a policy thing. That's the discretion we have that we can use.
So let me make sure that I understand where we sit. The difference between finished living space and loft space is $13.79 per square foot.
So what she's done is based on all she did is go in and pick that loft space as finished
Can you-
living area instead of loft space. I mean, the square footage exists, right? It is there. It's just the difference between if it's living space or unfinished
And the
space.
difference between an unfinished loft and living space is $13.
That's
At
what
this
you're being
point-
assessed on. It's gonna be worth more than $13. Everybody will acknowledge that cost. But that's what you're being taxed on.
She literally went in and looked at the value as loft that it is currently is that she's corrected it to, and it's currently carrying 43,100. If she picked that up as living space, it would be 59,650, which equates to the 59,650 is 49.71 a square foot. The 35.92 was 35.92 a square foot.
So $13.79 times 816 is 11,252 and 64 cents. That's mine, not yours.
Times the levy.
Times the levy, which is roughly 0.007. Yeah. Horseshoes and hand grenades here. That's $78.76 per year. Times 3 years is $236.31.
Even if you went back to the 19 years, you're talking $78
Not
or
19,
less.
13.
Well, on that dollar
15
square,
years.
I mean, 8 years ago, that dollar per square foot would have been significantly less, and it wouldn't have been $16,000. It would have been.
So you guys have
So
all
I
the
burned
numbers,
about that
right?
much diesel getting here today.
Yeah. But you guys have all the numbers, right? So you could come back to us and say, here's what it was, here's what it should have been, with, now that we know that 816 square feet was an error. And then let us look at that. Because I go back,
Just to be clear, if I understand, I don't have the ability to see what that value would have been in 2015. If we didn't have it picked up as finished, I don't have the ability to see what that value would have been in 2015 if that square footage was picked up as loft, unfinished instead of. I can tell you that changed today because I can look at my current cost tables, but I don't have the ability to go look and see what that value would have been in 2015 and in 2016 and in 2017.
So no cost values at all in the system for those years?
I could, no, I mean, I could look at the history of value, but there's no way to determine what portion of that value would have been the difference between unfinished loft area and finished living space over the detached garage.
Well, I guess, I'm gonna say it again. In 2008, the permit was right. And it wasn't in the system right.
Yeah,
I mean,
So you
um,
arbitrarily add square footage and say, catch me if you can. That's in
would you-
essence what you're
Would you
doing.
repeat what Scott said? Because I was doing some calculations, but I didn't listen close enough, because I would like to go back farther if the law allows us to.
We're gonna have to run that by legal counsel, because that's changing the precedent. I've been here 27 years and it's been that same way. And, you know, you talk about being arbitrary, you've gotta have some type of a standard to be consistent.
sure, I mean, I was at P&G, I dealt with legal all the time.
And I worked for the Coca-Cola
So-
company, I know legal, yeah, I get it.
And I do
there's-
think it's.
But there's legal, and there's right,
You guys
and
need
there's
that too,
wrong.
I have it too.
And ne'er the twain shall meet.
And
And
sometimes,
this is
Unfortunately,
wrong. This is
that-
wrong.
That's,
See, this permit doesn't even show the garage though.
It's right here. That's the bottom of the garage.
This is
This
the
includes
attached garage,
this-
not the, this is
No.
not the detached garage.
this right here. I've got the plans here.
What are we gonna do about 2022?
This building permit is for the single family
Get it
dwelling with
right.
detached garage. This isn't,
Okay.
this doesn't cover the detached garage
That's
at all.
why I'm here.
So
Right,
this doesn't show the detached
The value.
garage or the living space over the garage.
right, but if you
The
take a
value
look
of
at,
Number one, the square footage,
and it sounds like they'll be able to correct the square
and
footage.
therefore the assessed value.
But it also, and I'm
Trick
kind of
keys
listening
on
on
the-
this argument,
keys
it
on
almost
the,
sounds like,
we'll wait till
the
this-
loft wasn't picked up with square footage, is that right?
No,
It was.
it was picked up.
Okay,
It's just that the permit that we got didn't include this is for the house, it's not for the garage. So this doesn't, you know, she mentioned that it included the garage and that it was accurate, but this doesn't include the square footage of the garage at all, the detached garage. This is just for the home and the attached garage. This doesn't show the detached or the detached, the square footage over that.
was the detached built at the same time as the?
Yes,
Yes, and
and
actually,
it was permitted, so.
this is,
And I do think it's important to note that it's not, we don't go to every house and pick up it's not like if we're unable to appraise a home, it's an estimated value, and we don't pick up the finish on every single basement. We're not trying to punish the taxpayer. We do what's typical. And
I have a
looking
different perspective.
looking at the quality of your home and the area and what's typical for that quality of home in the area, generally that square footage above garages was finished.
So
And
there's-
that's where that came from. It wasn't intended to be a punishment. It's generally, truly, we just do what's typical. Because we have plenty of homes that have unfinished basements that we've never been in. And because an unfinished basement is typical, we've left them as unfinished. It's just when we are unable to get into a home, it's an estimated value, and typically for that area, or for that year belt, whatever it may be, the home is finished. That's the only time we'll go in. We'll bring it to whatever the standard, whatever the typical
We
is.
live in one of the largest developments in Swan Valley. At the time, there were 3 other homes. One was a 2-story. It was bank owned, nobody in it. Everything else was ranch. There are no,
Well,
so
and we
I have a
wouldn't
different
looked at
perspective. I
just
think,
your area.
I think this was done purposely.
I think if it was we wouldn't have, I mean, the moment we knew, we removed it.
right, and
Agreed.
I guess,
And that's not directed at you or your department, but what happened did happen, and I can't make any rhyme or reason of it. None.
but I guess what I would say is, in what we gave you on the September
that one,
2nd,
This-
yeah, that.
the September 2nd
Make it
card,
here, thank you.
it breaks out the attached garage. So it says dwelling, attached garage, detached, and the deck, right? So the attached garage is separate. And what this includes,
Yeah, and that's because it's defined up here as 815 of living space instead of being a loft. So
Right, but all
it is showing the total living space of the home being the living space of the home and the living space of that garage. It's defined to show the living space of, basically the total living space of the property
I know that, but the 3814 on that
is just.
is without is without the garage, which is what eventually we got to. This is 3814,
So the
because the garage is right
3814
here.
would be this 3388 and the bonus room over the attached garage, the 560.
Exactly,
So that's the 38.
exactly.
And that's
But
the permit on that, because the home had 3,800 square feet. That permit does not mention the garage at all, or the living space above the garage, or
It did, it has 1,000 feet, and it's actually 932 for here. And I
Right.
guess my point is that the house data you had, and it was correct, but it wasn't on here correct.
It was, it's just that if you were to pull this garage out completely, because it's not included on that
It's right,
permit,
it's right here. All I'm
Right.
saying is the
And-
light items are all there.
but if you're pulling this 30 by 40 detached garage out, you also have to pull this 816 of living space out, which would take that down to your.
I'm not talking about this right now. What I'm saying is, the 3814 is here. It says 47,
Because
because-
it's including this detached garage living space as well.
exactly.
We gotta
So
Get something that puts
that
that up there so we
3814
can.
is correct, and it doesn't show it here. And so that's all I'm saying is in 2008, you had the right data.
Well,
So
right, we picked it up and we measured it.
I still think we're talking about something we agree on.
Yeah,
It was done incorrectly.
So where I am, sir, and I absolutely agree with you. Where I'm at right now is, what does this mean? What are we gonna do about 2022? Both of these issues, and what does this mean?
Well, I think in
Frankly,
2022, we get the assessment correct for you, even though we were past BOE time. I mean, this is somewhat of a unique situation.
Thank you.
Typically, we would do all these first 2 weeks in July, but because you didn't appeal it at that time, you've missed that deadline.
I understand.
But I'm willing to understand, okay.
Thank you.
We'll work with you on this because of the circumstance. And I think in 2022, we get you the homeowner's exemption, which will do a correction before the taxes come out in December.
You
correct?
guys should honestly
So
have
you
that on your
will
desk.
have
We had
that
a
for
whole
22.
stack of this morning.
Excellent.
They changed the law. See, that's the other reason
Yeah.
why there's a certain time frame that our attorney suggests, because the law changes. And you'd have to have a legal staff to go through and find out what the law was every year for the last, but homeowner, you picked it up on homeowners exemptions. That changes every year.
Mhm.
This is a mass appraisal system. And they do it based on mass numbers and averages and sales.
2 years ago, we wouldn't be able to give you the homeowner's exemption for 2022 because you missed the April deadline. But they changed that to allow the exemption the application to be made all year. So now we can give it to you,
Well,
which is great.
It
Great thing.
is, and we appreciate that.
That's
That is,
one
And well, and we do
and
too.
we're retirees.
Yeah.
$1,000 is material.
Oh,
That's a lot
absolutely,
of
it is
money.
for all of us.
That's the inequity in the law that was spotted, like Commissioner Walker was talking about, and worked on to change. We supported that, because we'd see people come in, you had to be applied by April 15th, okay? It used to be first of the year, or occupied on the first day, you either got it or you didn't get it for the whole year. So why should somebody who's owner occupied the day before the
Yeah.
first of the year,
Talk about
Get it?
arbitrary, yeah.
Yes.
and the person that occupies the 5th of January, well, 6th of January is a little more recognizable date, but then they get it, or I mean, they don't get it. So
Yeah, that's not right.
this property tax is not a uniform, it's the best they can do. It's a terrible way to raise taxes. I'd like to see them put more services on general funds. This is just a political side on, and get some of the revenue on sales tax, on things that aren't directly tied to a property.
Justice, we spend a great portion of our year in conflict with the state legislature trying to argue on behalf of taxpayers.
I spend a great
We're
portion of
we're on
my
your
year
side.
And it's not all self-centered. Really, I mean, it's really not.
But when you go back to the other issue, I mean, we may have to wait till our legal counsel to
Yeah,
review it, because
and I'd
I
be
would like
willing
to
to
see us
listen
go
to that,
back further.
But we need
under
to have
this
a consistent
circumstance.
policy, or we're just bouncing back and forth based on each one.
The other challenge is we don't know what that value would have been every year.
No, but I think because we don't, we have to take an average, and we have to just hit the
We'll look
best
at
we
that.
can.
And you guys, based on the calculation that I just walked you through and that I think we all agree on, even if you go back 10 years, 15 years, it's a rounding error. It is chump change when you think about the
I'm
growth.
coming up with about $1,100.
Yeah.
I
When you
get
think
that.
about the growth that Bonneville County has seen in the last
But it's a
3 years.
principle thing.
Well,
And
it's
that's where it
your
goes-
error, sir. It
I
is,
know.
we recognize it as an error that you guys committed and to say that we can only go back to 2020 as an arbitrary date is ignoring the fact that you, not personally, but the
The
county
county.
is responsible.
Okay, but how far back do you go? You know, that's a debate.
If it was your money, how far would you want it to go back to?
I would want it to go back what was allowed under the statute, because, you know, then you get into how far back do you go to, the house that was built in 1900? Do you go back on the taxes all the way to 1900? If you find an error that's been going on.
I'm not trying to go back to
No,
1900.
I know you're not, but somebody else may be.
Well, and I keep going back, look, I get it, if, you know, we didn't do 100% of what we were supposed to do, and you didn't do 100% what we were supposed to do, this is why we're here, right? So we're in this mutually exclusive place. So the fact that we can even just take a look at what is possible would be helpful.
And
That's
that's what
what-
we narrowed it down
That's
to.
what I'm
Exactly.
trying to do. You made a very good comment right at the beginning, that our jobs are to treat all taxpayers fairly. That's what we're trying to do here, because I can guarantee you, we're treating you the exact same. And that's what I try to do in my chair, is to not treat anybody different than I would anybody else, right? If somebody comes in here louder than the other person who was meek, you know, I'm gonna treat them both the same. I'm gonna treat them as fairly as I can see it. And going back the 14 years really is beyond what we've done with anybody else. But I believe this circumstance warrants at least our legal counsel taking a look at it, so that we make sure we are treating you as fairly as I'd treat anybody.
Okay. So next steps and timing, where are we?
Legal counsel, I don't think we'll have it next Tuesday, but it'll be.
That's my fault. We'll see next week.
I'm going to Boise tomorrow.
Oh,
I'll throw a block for you, all right?
yeah.
What you going over there for? Boise State game?
I've got
Right, that was
a
the right
new
answer.
puppy. He's 5.5 months old. The trainer is in Weezer. Do you guys know where
Yeah.
Weezer is? So I'm meeting with him. He's getting introduced to gunfire and birds.
What kind of?
A poodle pointer. You familiar? They're awesome.
We got it.
They're just awesome dogs.
Under the circumstances, because we have meetings next week, I wonder if we could get with Scott on Monday, you know, not able to tomorrow.
Yeah, we can
If we can.
visit. I gotta tell you a story though, because it reminds me, Commissioner Reed's story, we want to treat all taxpayers the same, reminds me of Cliff Long, who was a commissioner when I first took office 27 years ago. And, you know, to give credit to the assessor's office, when we first took office, there were 1,150 Board of Equalization hearings the first year we took office. That was our whole summer. But Cliff would always start out and explain the process and said, we're here to make sure all taxpayers are treated the same. And, you know, everybody thinks they're paying way too much tax. Well, that's the problem. You know, you're gonna treat us all alike.
I will say that we're talking about some of the improvements, right, on the June assessment, you know, just to put yes or no, homeowner exemption, are you already in it or not? I mean, it was so nice when you checked for me, because I had no idea. Clearly, there's a database that has all the no's in it. I mean, they would be very appreciative to get that letter right now, before the end of the year.
So.
So
and
that's
I
all
talked
I'm
to
saying.
Mike about this. It's clearly something we can approve, right? The challenge is that most, obviously not all, but most of the homes in Bonneville County that are not currently receiving the homeowner exemption are going to be rentals or properties that are fully aware of the fact that they're not receiving it and they can't receive it. And it would be nice, I guess I don't know the way to alert them, aside from every year or every 3 years, sending a letter saying, hey, reminder, this is a program that exists. But then is that, as a taxpayer, obviously benefit you guys, but as the rest of the taxpayers, would it be benefit to send thousands of letters each year to say, hey, remember there's this program that exists if you want to sign up for it, and then you're paying for postage.
What about a little third sheet flyer that gets
Or the
submitted
link for
with,
the application.
with the bill?
Yeah, and there's certainly room for
An
improvement.
insert maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
while
Yeah.
you're already sending something.
And a lot of this,
Yeah.
I
For
think,
the
can
notes.
probably be dealt with digitally as we become better at that process. But I tell you, if it weren't for COVID, we wouldn't have seen the changes in our digital world that we've seen. And as pain in the butt as that was, the fact that all of our commissioner meetings are on the same Zoom meeting number 3 days a week, on time, every time, and anybody in the country can Zoom into our meetings, wasn't there 3 years ago.
Right.
Because the technology wasn't there, and so you can Zoom in for Road and Bridge every Wednesday. You can Zoom in for planning and zoning. And how do we get that information out to people?
Yeah.
We put it on our Facebook page, but if they don't go to our Facebook page, we can put it on our webpage, but so how do we get it out to people? And so every homeowners association I talk to, I say, oh, by the way, what do you think about including some of this information in your newsletter that goes out to your, so that, because we got to get out of the box.
So
So tell,
But it would-
tell your homeowners association,
we'd be more than
is-
happy to do that.
do you have the homeowners
Well, but I
exemption?
would just say that because the June assessment
I
is
ask
the first
everybody
thing
who
everybody
moves in.
looks at,
Yeah.
that is the most
It's-
important document.
And we could easily include an insert, there's obviously great room for improvement. As you guys were mentioning, it kind of going in my head, like knowing how kind of the back end works, I don't know how we could include a sketch with it. You know what I mean?
Even the square footage, okay, so you've got the second property or the improved property, right?
3 bedrooms, 2,800 square feet,
So
3
on
baths.
yeah,
That's what we're doing.
We'll have, it would require writing a program, but it's certainly something we can do, like it would be beneficial.
I think it's an
It's just a box.
opportunity.
yeah, I mean,
Well,
where it's got,
you're right,
It
but
would be
it's
pulling
adding
it
a
from
box
our
and
system.
rewriting codes so that
it
it
can find.
does that
Right,
accurately.
so, and
Because we
that would be
don't
easy.
want to do it
And
inaccurately.
we don't actually print
And
our
it's-
notices in-house.
Right.
So it'd be, like I said, it's definitely where we need to go.
Yeah. I mean, if you've got a, residential property that you're getting assessed on, just put residential square foot to, assessed 3,800 square feet, 5,200, whatever. And then people would go, oh my gosh, that's not right. Like, people know the square footage. And at least give them visibility. And I think it would go a long way for you guys to have that transparency, to make sure it's right,
Yeah.
and to help people.
I've just been thinking about something we've just done in elections, because I used to be, it still is one of the things that people don't know, they don't understand, they, try to get that. And, talking about this improvements in the digital world, which is making it more possible to do the type of things that we've ever had there as far as notice. Have you got a cell phone?
I do.
Scan that QR code.
Then you have
You
our
are
webpage.
you are going right to the
Oh.
limits of
I
my.
have it.
Trust
I'm
me,
the
it's
HOA secretary, I'm
pushing
like,
me
all the
beyond my
time.
Can you
limits.
send a letter to all your people?
You know what, I'm gonna do that. But I actually think
Okay,
getting
now
out to
that
the
should
news
pop
and
up
telling them, hey,
with
by the
directly
way,
to the elections
and you guys
website.
would look like the heroes, for God's sake.
Did it?
I mean,
Well,
if
and
you could help people,
working.
get their footage right,
I know that
and
this has been a miserable
Passionate
whole
undertaking.
experience, but I'm a huge fan of our previous assessor, and I will continue. I don't think anything was done maliciously, like this was all,
Come up.
and I completely understand your frustration, but
Okay.
It's
look,
populated.
I work for P&G.
Okay, now,
There's like
see, this is the
300,000
default.
people.
This is
I
where
get
you
the
are.
departmental
Type in your
miscommunications, I
address
get that.
up there.
And it's never
Full
usually one
address or
person,
just
it's generally the
your-
process.
So it should pull it in
But if
from
the
your
process
street
isn't
address, you
working,
don't have to.
that's when you say, you gotta fix it, regardless who's managing it. So,
and we do have better systems now, and we do have more of the blueprints
That's
available.
my street address.
We don't have an
Okay.
automated system with
Search.
the planning and zoning to get our blueprints. We have an easy method to get the city of Idaho Falls, but we don't have.
well, like I said, just put the square footage. I mean, people are gonna know, they're
Yeah,
gonna, oh
and
yeah, that's right. or
Luckily, we
not,
use
and then we can call.
software that is supported by the state, and we're not the only county on that software, so it's something we can work with them to try to, like I said, it'll require some additional,
Sure.
but it's certainly something we should work
Well,
towards.
lead the way,
That's right.
there's lots of
Yeah.
counties, right? So,
See, this is,
but I thank you guys for your time and your understanding and all the help.
I'm pretty sure,
Scroll.
This thing's running really slow, I don't know why.
I'm pretty sure I have pictures of your house.
It's right there.
Because, no, I mean.
I'll play
good
with it when I
ones,
get home,
because
There,
when
okay.
kicking
So
the
what
couch
that'll
to the
do,
exterior
see,
ones,
that automatically takes
my
you
wife
to a
went to every
website.
house of that
Scroll down,
roof
you're in
and
precinct
siding color.
55.
Yeah.
Okay,
To
Like,
try and
where's your
convince
phone
me
location?
that these were the
So you
colors
got
the
the
house had to be.
you get calls for that all
That
the
was
time.
after I
yeah,
said,
yeah.
absolutely,
Right
can't
on.
have
You
a
can
green
go
roof
over
or a red
to
roof,
things
because
like
we live in a
this.
forest.
Right.
Scroll over. Okay,
And
Got
the
it.
colors are
well,
almost
yeah, because they
identical
just
to yours.
redistrict.
But
Currently
when
in
I
there, these are the
pulled it up on the high resolution,
legislative
Yeah.
candidates there
photograph stuff.
that are gonna be in there. Pretty soon it'll be just your.
Yeah, and it's funny because
35.
we put some
Okay.
standing
Ask
seat.
about
We'll go to that again.
Through two
Then
views, that was the other
it
big
talks
argument.
about the other, your.
Oh,
Was
over the garage,
commercial-
the
And then
detached.
it tells you who the
No,
mayor is, the
it
city
looks like when
council
you're
people.
photographed, there's
school
dormers that are
district.
fairly close to
Yeah.
each other.
But a lot of people
driveway
don't.
side.
Attached to
cool.
the house.
So see
Yeah,
what I'm.
on the house, the second
Oh.
story.
Thinking
Right,
about
that's
dormers.
over the garage,
This,
yeah.
this discussion is, instead of an
And we
insert
get probably twice the snow that we
specifically,
do.
you
Right.
could do a QR code,
But
which
I
goes
wouldn't
to
let
a
her-
whole sheet of
Put
explanation.
dormers on a roof,
You know,
because,
that automatically, when
because
you put
that
that in
is
the
a snow
text
pinch and
notice,
then an ice heave,
it
and
pops
that's
up
me
there, and then you
re-roofing
have a
4 years
list
from
of
now in that
questions.
spot.
Yeah, we have the
How do I
heating
qualify
coils.
for the homeowner's exemption? How do I do
So that it
this?
just
How do I
knows.
do that?
Why would I
That's
wanna
what she said,
participate in
I
it?
said, I don't trust those
Yeah,
enough when we're
Yeah,
gone.
Oh.
and developing that.
Well, I
And then
mean,
all you have to do
depending on how
is
much
the
you're
taxpayer
gone,
scan
you
that
know.
code.
And read
I
it.
mean, we have a
Yeah.
friend that
Well,
comes in
so
and
that-
turns them on,
that
and
might be-
you plug them in from the
So
outside.
we're only
so
gone
it's
for
pretty
Pretty easy to work.
Good portion of March, but twice we've had.
So if you see
Oh,
a
it's
storm.
it's like an ice skating rink
Shows
outside our
up
garage.
against tax
Yeah,
notice.
had we
You'll
had
know that
known,
You'll know
we
you made a
would have
difference.
changed the house the other way so the sun got on
You
the
know what, I
front.
get that.
But you
Sun
don't
on
know
the
that when you
driveway.
don't live
So
there.
Dustin, how do we correct the taxes for this year since we are past the old?
Let's get the
So-
last, then we'll have to do a cancellation, but let's get the question answers, so we
Scott
have the
to
total
give us a-
number. Because
Because
it'll
you
all
can
have
put
to
it
be
all on one.
So the other thing is that in addition to this correction of square footage over the garage, Tony's made some additional, because she's had the opportunity to meet, I don't know who she spoke with, or if you actually,
If it's conditional stuff, it's hard because
Right.
you're talking square footage, an asset that does not exist.
Right.
And
That's where the law allows
that's
us
where
to
the
make
law allows
changes
us to
this
allow
late
to.
date.
so we are just changing whatever the value
Square
is for the
footage.
square footage.
Yeah.
I mean, we could,
You can do whatever you can do.
now we're just gonna do a tax
Because
cancellation.
it's your
for however many years
office.
you guys wanna go back, so, or can go back, so.
Yeah, 'cause
We can do what we can do.
property taxes are frustrating, you know. I mean, I've paid on homes, I've had several rentals since the dry farm. And I paid on those for years, and my kids are long out of school. And I look at the portion of property tax, which is 40% of the money I spend, which is a lot of dollars when you live in the city of Idaho Falls. So I'm not a fan of the property tax, but I am a fan of having to uphold the law when I say I'm going to.
Fair enough.
If
I
you
We
feel
did
the
swear
same.
to that.
We have no children living in Utah, and all the property tax we paid down there for schools that we never used at all.
So we loved our kids.
So we'll work on that QR code, because,
Yeah.
you know, following that model, and Trish can put that together real
And
quick.
it could be like a real simple,
Yeah,
and even lead to a search your address and see if your information's correct.
yeah, there's a lot of things you can do. See if you can look up your assessment, the square footage, everything you're talking about, get more in detail.
Just
But
give
you
you a
don't
link.
have the ability to put on a program on a notice like that.
Yeah.
Good
QR
idea,
code on
you
there
just
that
print the
takes
QR
it.
code on
Yeah.
the,
Is there
Yeah.
is there
That's a good idea
bandwidth
on the notice.
available?
yeah.
Well, I think we're gonna start
Yeah.
including
Yeah.
a pamphlet to help explain several different processes that are kind of confusing that, and in that little, whatever we include, we can have that be a
Put a
section.
QR code too.
Yeah,
And-
that's what I mean.
and
is
then
we'll
have
include it on
tabs.
that.
Well, and as you guys
Just like
have an
you.
opportunity to look at our webpage and follow links, and when you see things that would be smoother, it's a new webpage. And if you've ever been involved, the process of debugging and ironing out and shortening and making things more obvious and
We're
cleaner,
user friendly too.
as you see those things, send a note either directly to our web guy, which it does on the webpage, or to me, because his
Okay.
office is right down the hall. And it's like, making government transparent is virtually impossible if people refuse to look up.
Good point.
Well, we're
There's no
looking at-
ski, by the way.
Yes, and I'm glad that you are, because now I know you. I know who lives in that house.
Where is this subdivision?
It's
Well,
right
two ways to
down-
get there. If you turn in front of the
Roadhouse.
roadhouse, thank you. But they leave the
Everybody
names the
knows-
same.
Everybody knows the
If
bar.
you turn in the
South.
roadhouse where it was gravel and now it's less gravel, right?
Yeah, a little
This
less.
year,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'd like to talk to somebody about that too.
And go all the way to the end of that and then turn right and then left.
Yeah,
right?
that's the first
That's,
house on
yeah,
the left.
that's their house.
So South Park Ranch is at the very end of Stoltenberg,
Right.
that's our
You know,
HOA.
Ski up there?
No, he's across the river and way down.
Yeah.
Oh,
We ski in Turkey?
No, Ski's the
No,
guy
Ski,
who owns a
yeah.
house
Oh,
on the other
sorry.
side of the river,
What's his last
down
name?
across from Irwin.
Got it.
is he Polish?
Skabelinski or
I should
something?
know this guy.
Yeah. Are
So-
you Polish?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
100%.
Or are you Lithuanian?
No, Polish.
Yeah, he used to
No,
have-
Polish.
I know several Lithuanians, so, you know.
He used to have Ski's gun shop down here.
Really?
It's just a cranky
Ski,
old guy,
so
but we get along so well.
Solinski, right?
It's just something-
Solinski.
No, there's a couple of extra things in
With an
there.
S.
I've never
Yeah.
said it right, and I've known him since I was 21.
Oh, I didn't say
Old
that, I
guy?
met him.
Yeah.
And I said,
But I
"I'm not gonna
can-
marry
I
you,"
can
and
introduce you
every
to
day of my
Ms.
life,
Aldonis.
still 10 times.
That's
Brian, if you
Who will function
figure out
as
the
our
dollar
point
amount and how many
contact
years,
on this?
just do a text.
Okay.
Do you have my number
However many years.
and my email, correct?
I do.
Yes.
And I
The
can
dollar
give you
amount
the
and
card
Okay,
number.
okay, we'll have to talk to Scott to see how many years he'll let us go back. But
And
I
all
mean,
the
I
other
just took an
stuff, it's
average
me.
of .0075. I mean, I don't know, I used the .0075, you used .007.
Yeah,
And I came up, it came up to $84.39 a year. So we'll
There's
find
one
out how
for
many
your
years we go
homeowner's
back.
file.
I'm gonna advocate to go back as far as the law will allow, as far as our attorney will allow us.
thank you.
Okay,
Yeah, you guys, thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
we'll train that dog.
Ladies, thank you.
Yes, forever.